Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Pe Bet, and with this daf we complete the 9th perek of Masechet Kiddushin and the Masechet Kiddushin and the entire Seder Nashim. So here we go. Lo yelamed adam ravak sofrim velo telamed isha soferim. A single man should not teach children, nor should a woman teach children. The Gemara will explain why. Rabbi Elazar Omer, af mi she'en lo isha lo yelamed sofrim. Furthermore, a man who does not have a wife, that's different from being single. It means even if he's married but his wife is not around, also should not teach children. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo yir'eh ravak behema velo yishnu shne revakim betalit ahat hachamim matirin. Rabbi Yehuda says an unmarried person should not be a shepherd. We seem to be worried that then they may come to bestiality. Want to avoid any even possibility. And two single men should not be sleeping together under one cover. And again, it was most common back then to sleep without clothes on. So this may lead to prohibited behavior. Hachamim, however, permit two men to sleep together, even without clothes on. My ta'ama, what is the reason that a single man cannot teach children? If we're worried that he may sin with the children, pedophilia. This is unfortunately was more common than we might expect, because the Greeks and Romans actually was part of the regular teacher-student relationship, as hard as it is to believe, but male teachers with young male children. So this was around in the contemporary times to the rabbis. Nevertheless, the rabbis say that we're not worried about that in Jewish circles. The rabbis said to the Yehuda that the Jewish community is not susceptible, is not suspect of homosexual relations, nor on bestiality. And so that would include pedophilia, and therefore this is not something that we worry about. It's not found among Israel. This is an accurate statement, it seems to be, because it definitely was found in non-Jewish circles. Rather, a single man is prohibited not because we're afraid he's going to sin with the children, but rather with the mothers of the kids. So when the mothers come to drop off, pick up the kids, come for parent-teacher meetings, then we're afraid that the teacher and the mother may have illicit relations, or if it's a female teacher, when the fathers come and drop off their kids, then that might lead to them sinning. Rabbi Elazar Omer af mi she'en. Rabbi Elazar adds, even someone who does not have a wife around. Ibaya lehu mi she'en lo isha kelal o dilma b'she'ena shiruyah etzlo. Tashema af mi she'yesh lo ve'ena shiruyah etzlo lo yelamed soferim. So the question about Rabbi Elazar is, what does this mean if he doesn't have a wife? He doesn't have a wife at all, meaning he's single? Or it means that his wife is not nearby. And the answer is, it means that even if he is married, but his wife is not residing with him, she lives far away or is away, then that he also should not be teaching. So again, the reason here, because if a man, this will apply to women also, is married and their spouse is nearby, then they'll prevent them from sinning. But even if they're married but their spouse is not nearby, similar to laws of yichud, and here this teacher would be in contact with these parents on a regular basis, and therefore should not be a teacher of children if their spouse is not nearby. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo yir'eh. Rabbi Yehuda said that a single person should not be a shepherd, and two single men should not be sleeping in a bed together. However, Chachamim said that these two things are permitted. Expanding on this, we have a Braita, Tanya amru lo Rabbi Yehuda lo nechshedu Yisrael mishkab zachur velo al habehema. The Braita expands on the opinion of Chachamim that they disagree with Rabbi Yehuda and say these these acts are permitted, because they told Rabbi Yehuda, no, the Jewish community is not suspected regarding Mishkab Zachor, and also not regarding bestiality, and therefore there is no problem for two men to sleep in the same bed, nor for a person to be a shepherd. And now for the final Mishnah, Kol she'asakav im nashim lo yitached im nashim, v'lo yelamed adam et beno manut hanashim. Anyone who has a business that brings him in regular contact with women, like he sells items that primarily women buy, he has to be extra careful and not have yichud with women at all, even in cases where we saw above that there are leniencies, like a man cannot be together alone with two women, but with 3-4 women it was permitted. So this person who is more familiar with them, because he's in contact for business all the time with them, he has to be extra careful and extra stringent and not be alone with them at all. And furthermore, a father has a responsibility to teach his son an occupation. A father should not teach an occupation to his son that will bring him into regular contact with women. So all these are extensions of the laws of Yichud above. This is a fitting conclusion to Masechet Kiddushin, which was all about the sanctity of marriage, of family, and these are all things that can interfere with it through arayot or through adultery. And so these are all safeguards around the sanctity of family. Rabbi Meir Omer, לעולם ילמד אדם את בנו אומנות נקייה וקלה, ויתפלל למי שהעושר והנכסים שלו, שאין אומנות שאין בה עניות ועשירות, שלא עניות מן האומנות, ולא עשירות מן האומנות, אלא הכל לפי זכותו. Once we mentioned advice about what types of occupations a father should teach his son, so Rabbi Meir adds further advice. A person should teach his son an occupation that is clean and easy. And furthermore, one should always pray to Hashem for the source of all wealth, for success. Because after all, it's not the occupation itself that there is no occupation that doesn't have poor people and rich people. There are poor investment bankers and there are rich farmers. It's not the occupation itself. Poverty does not come from a certain occupation, nor does wealth come of a certain occupation. Rather, everything is according to the merit. And therefore, you may as well choose for your son an occupation that will be clean and easy, not be too degrading and too backbreaking, because after all, the work is just the hishtadlut. But the true wealth comes from mi sha'osher shelo. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Ha'ita miyamecha chayav ha'of sheyesh balahem umanut. And here's a proof. Have you ever seen in your life an animal or a bird that has a job, right? You ever see a bird that wakes up in the morning and has to commute on the train? And yet they all go and they can get whatever they need without toil, right? You ever see a deer get a suitcase and go to the office and put in 12 hours? You don't see that, right? They just walk around and they pick worms, they pick leaves, and they get everything that they need without backbreaking labor. And yet all the animals and birds were created to serve humans, and humans were created to serve their master, to serve their creator, to serve Hashem. So all the more so, we should have the merit not to have a livelihood without anguish. In other words, if animals that were created to serve humans can get all their needs without backbreaking labor, so all the more so humans that serve directly HaKadosh Baruch Hu should, in theory, be able to get whatever they need without terrible anguish. However, I have committed evil, meaning from Adam Harishon, committed evil and brought curse upon humankind. And that's why we have lost our livelihood, and that's why people have to work hard making a living. But the essence of the point is that naturally, everything is available. Natural resources, right, fruits and vegetables and everything just grows and is there available for us. If we have the merit, then it can come easy. Abba Gurian ish Sadian omer mishum Abba Guria lo yimaled adam et beno hamar gamal kadar sapan ro'eh v'chen vanish umanutan emunat listim. More advice about occupations. A person should not teach his son trades of being a donkey driver, camel driver, pot maker, sailor, shepherd, or storekeeper, because these all invite a person towards robbery. A donkey driver and camel driver, sometimes they quote one price, and then after it's done, it says, oh well, there was traffic, there were mountains, and it takes more, right? Shepherd, same thing. Sailor, same thing. Shepherd, sometimes animals would veer off and take other people's stuff, eat from other people's farms. And storekeepers, there's so much opportunity to use a false weight, right, or to overcharge or underpay. Rabbi Yehuda omer mishma hamarin ruban reshaim hagamalin ruban keshin sapanin ruban hasidim. Rabbi Yehuda, however, says in his name that actually is a different distinction between them. The donkey drivers, most of them are wicked. They go and either overcharge people for carrying things, or they eat from other people's fields, whereas camel drivers are okay. They're going over the long desert. They have to look towards God to make it to their place. And sailors, all right, certainly they have to have fear of heaven to make it through. They're always in prayer, and so the sapanim are all right. The best of the doctors deserve to go to Gehinam. Well, back then, doctors didn't have so much that they could really offer their patients. Bloodletting just made people weak and probably killed a lot of people. If they had to do surgery, it was without anesthesia. And, you can think about what people think of their dentists, even today, that we have anesthesia. And so all the more so back then, when the doctors would cause tremendous pain to people, and probably more than half the time it did not help them. So although they relied on doctors, the doctors, poor doctors, didn't have too much to offer. And the most kosher of the butchers is a partner of Amalek. Butchers were known to be gruff personalities and sometimes would cut corners and sell non-kosher meat or do other things. And so they were considered the partners of Amalek. Rabbi Nehorai Omer, Maniach ani kol umanot שבעולם ואני מלמדת בני אלא תורה שאדם אוכל משכרה בעולם הזה והקרן קיימת לו לעולם הבא. שאר כל אומנות אינן כן. כשאדם בא לידי חולי או לידי זקנה או לידי ייסורין ואינו יכול לעסוק במלאכתו, הרי הוא מת ברעב. אבל תורה אינה כן, אלא משמרתו מכל רע בנערותו ונותנת לו אחרית ותקווה בזקנותו. Okay, before we mentioned like a whole bunch of occupations that are not good. So what is a good occupation? Rabbi Nehorai says, if I would forget about all occupations and teach my son only Torah, because Torah, one gets reward for it in this world, and the principle, right? The interest is in this world, and the principle remains for the future world, whereas other occupations are not so. If a person becomes sick or old or has suffering upon him and he can no longer work, so that's it. There's no more income, and the person will die of starvation. But the Torah is not so, but rather it saves him from bad things when he's young and gives him a future and hope even in his old age. And Pesukim to prove that. Benaduto mahu omer vekove Adonai yachlifu koach beziknuto ma omer od yinubun beseba. Regarding someone who devotes himself to Torah when they are young, they hope in God and renews their strength. They have great strength, and even in their old age, the pasuk says, they shall still bring forth fruit beseba in their old age. V'chenu omer ba'Abraham abinu, and Abraham similarly is blessed not only when he's young, but even more so when he's old. V'Abraham zaken, v'Hashem barach et Abraham ba'kol. When Abraham was old, God blessed him with everything. Masinu shasak Abraham Avinu kol haTorah kula ad shelo nitena shenemar aike b'asher shama Abraham bekoli vayishmor mishmarti misvotai chukotai v'torotai. Why did Abraham have the merit to be blessed in his old age even more than when he was young, because he fulfilled the entire Torah. As the Pasuk says, because Avraham listened to my voice and kept my charges, my commandments, my statutes, my laws. So we see that Avraham kept all the mitzvot. Some interpret this literally, that he had inkling to all the mitzvot, literally kept ate Masa and Pesach and so on. Other opinions say he kept them in essence, the essence of the laws in terms of faith and righteousness and morality, even though the details of the practice of the laws came later at Ma'amad Har Sinai. But either way, Avraham, the paragon of Torah values, and that served him well in his life and in his old age. That completes the final Mishnah, and now to the Gemara on that. Tenora banan kol she'asakav im nashim surora, kegon hasorfim v'asirikim v'nakorot v'harochlin v'hagardiyim v'saparim v'kobsim v'hagara v'habalan v'habursiki. So Mishnah mentioned anyone whose occupation brings them into regular contact with women is no good. So now we are going to delineate what they are. So anyone whose occupation is with women will turn towards bad, and the examples of these are a smith that makes vessels that women come and buy, carders, people that turn wool that spin wool, and then women come and buy the wool, fixers of hand mills, where every household had a hand mill that needed regular maintenance, and so the woman would have to go to that person, peddlers of jewelry and perfume, and weavers that were involved in special weaving of material, barbers, launderers, bloodletters, and bathhouse attendants, and tanners. So some of these are bad for other reasons as well. Tanners are very smelly. They had to use all kinds of horrible ingredients in order to tan. You can imagine bloodletters, not a very pleasant thing, and bathhouse attendants have to deal with dirt and horrible things all the time. So these are all bad occupations. En ma'amidin mehem melech velo kohen gadol. Mai ta'ama lo mishum de pisile ela mishum de zil umanutaihu. Anyone who was even once before had any of these occupations cannot be appointed to be a king or a kohen gadol. What's the reason? Not because they're pasul. This is not like a physical blemish that one would make one not be able to be a kohen gadol, or a problem of lineage or anything like that, but rather because these are disgraceful trades, and so once they get a reputation of this person is a weaver, a launderer, a tanner, so then everybody says, what, a tanner is going to be a king or a kohen gadol? These occupations get permanently stuck as labels on the person, and then no one is going to respect them after that. Tenor banan asara devarim ne'emru begara me'alech al sido v'rucho gasa v'nitla v'yoshev v'eno sara v'ayno ra'a ochel harbe mosik chim'a v'chashud al ayrot v'al hagezel v'al shefichut damim. 10 things regarding a bloodletter. He walks on his side in a haughty manner. His spirit is arrogance. He leans and sits. He doesn't just sit down regular, but kind of a conceited fashion. They're stingy, envious. They eat a lot, but they discharge only a little. Suspected of engaging in intercourse with forbidden relations, of stealing, and bloodshed. Well, the bloodshed is kind of obvious. They literally are shedding people's blood. And if they make a mistake and shed maybe a little bit too much blood, person will faint or die. Bloodletting, well, while thought to be good for various diseases and even to prevent disease, really caused a lot more harm, probably more harm than almost any other so-called medical intervention. And so you could imagine that people would hate bloodletters so appropriately. Darash bar kapara le'olam yilamed adam et beno umanot nikiya ve'kala, and amplifying what the Mishnah said, a person should teach his son a clean and easy trade. Maihi amar Rav Yehuda machta de tal miyuta. Needlework for embroidery. Even though sewing was usually a woman's trade, but this is some kind of special needlework that required a high level of talent. And this would be a clean and easy trade. Tanya, Rabbi Omer, En lecha umanut she'oberet min ha'olam. Ashrei mi shero'eh et Torah be'umanut me'oleh, oy lo lemi shero'eh Torah be'umanut peguma. There is no occupation that disappears from the world. Everybody's always going to need, a baker, a farmer. Well, they didn't know about modern tractors that, 95% of the population used to have to be farmers, and today less than 5% are needed for that, and AI are going to take over a whole bunch of more jobs very soon. Computers already took over many jobs. Okay, so jobs are different, but the point is that all occupations are needed, and so someone has to be a garbage collector. But blessed is someone who sees his parents in a respected job, and woe to someone whose parents are in a lowly job. Impossible to have a world without perfume makers and tanners. So blessed is the one who is a perfume maker and is always around nice smells, and woe to the person, unfortunate for him, who is a tanner. He has to work with dung and smells bad all the time. The world needs boys and girls, but woe to the person, blessed is the person who has boys, and woe to him who has girls. Not that they didn't love their daughters, I'm sure they did, but in a person's old age, their sons would be their 401k, would stay around on their farms and continue and provide for elderly parents, whereas daughters would go to the outlaws, and then they would lose their pension. So there were financial reasons why people wanted to have boys. Rabbi Meir Omer, Le'olam yilamed Adam לבנו אומנות נקייה וקלה ויבקש רחמים למי שהעושר ונכסים שלו שאין עניות מן האומנות ואין עשירות מן האומנות אלא למי שהעושר שלו שנאמר לי הכסף ולי הזהב נאום השם צבאות. And again, further amplifying what we said in the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir says a person should only teach his child an occupation that is clean and easy, and pray to he who owns all riches in the world, that the person, he should be successful, because poverty does not come from an occupation, nor does wealth come from any specific occupation, but rather everything comes from he who's the source of all wealth. As the pasuk says, mine is the silver, mine is the gold, says Hashem Sevaot. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Im reita miyamecha, if you ever seen a bird, right, or an animal that takes his briefcase to the office and has to sit and work all day long, or does backbreaking labor in the field, you never see that. They have an easy time. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, miyamai lo ra'iti sibi kayas ve'ari sabal ve'shu'al hanvani ve'hem mitparsin shelo besa'ar. I have never seen a deer who has to go out and collect the figs and put them out to dry. I never saw a lion as a porter, nor a fox as a storekeeper. Ve'hem lo nibru ela l'shamesheni v'ani nibreti לשמש את קוני. מה אלו שלא נבראו אלו לשמשני מתפרנסים שלא בסער, ואני שנבראתי לשמש את קוני, אין עוד דין שאתפרנס שלא בסער, אלא שהרעותי את מעשיי וקיפחתי את פרנסתי, שנאמר, עוונותיכם היטו. And so they never see an animal that has to work a retail store, and yet they were only created to serve me, human beings. And I was created to serve my master. So if they were only created to serve me and they get their salary without suffering, I am created to serve God directly. All the more so I should be able to get a salary without anguish. However, I have committed evil actions, and therefore I lost my chance to have an easy salary. As the pasuk in Yirmiyah said, your iniquities have turned away these things, and your sins have held you back from this good. Finally, Rabbi Nehorai Omer, Maniach ani kol umanut. Rabbi Nehorai says, I will teach my son only Torah. Tanya, Rabbi Nehorai Omer, Maniach ani kol umanut שבעולם ואני מלמד את בני אלא תורה, שכל אומנות שבעולם אין עומדת לו, אלא בימי ילדותו, אבל בימי זקנותו, הרי הוא מוטל ברעב. אבל תורה אינה כן, עומדת לו לאדם בעת ילדותו, ונותנת לו אחרית ותקווה בעת זקנותו. When I says I would leave aside all occupations in the world and teach my son only Torah. For all other occupations do not last a person only when he's young and is able to do them. But then when he gets old and he can no longer work in the field, man the store, then he descends into starvation. The Torah is not so. Rather, it stands up for him when he's young and gives him a future and hope even when he's older. What does the pasuk say about a person when he's young? It says, those who hope in God and study Torah, they will have their strength renewed, and they will regrow their plumes like eagles. That regrow their plumes, they're ever fresh, always reinvigorated through their hope and through their Torah study. And in their old age, what does the pasuk say? They will bring forth fruit again in old age. They shall be full of sap and richness. And hopefully, in the merit of our studying Torah each and every day, may we get invigorated strength. We need it every single day. We need that strength to keep going and learn yet another daf of Talmud. And hopefully, in the merit of that daily study, we also should have the ability to continue to study Torah into our old age and learn together for many, many years to come. Chazakim uberuchim, hadaran alach asara yuchasim, usilika la masechet kiddushin, hadran alach seder nashim. Chazakim uberuchim tihiyu.